Welcome to Wabasan Wire. Today we're talking about Rafizi's stern challenge to the government's anti-corruption credibility. So the political ground in Malaysia, it really shifted recently. You could feel it, especially with that huge loss for the Pakatan Harapan coalition in the Sabah state election.
A very heavy blow.
Right, and that wasn't just, a local issue. It feels like it cracked something at the core of the ruling coalition's story.
Well, that's exactly the point that a very prominent figure, the former Economy Minister Rafizi, is making. He's connecting that defeat directly, and I mean directly, to one critical issue.
And that is?
Public trust. He's basically arguing that the Sabah results are a direct consequence of the public, specifically those middle-class voters who were their original base feeling, deeply disappointed.
Disappointed in what, exactly?
In the government's perceived commitment to fighting corruption. He says it's faded. This isn't just about politics. It's a challenge to the coalition's entire reason for being.
So it's not just about accountability, it's about political survival. He's basically put it out there that the government's entire credibility now rests on one single, very high-stakes decision.
A pivotal one.
Yeah.
And it's all about the leadership of the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission.
Okay, let's dig into that.
You have to remember the history here. I mean, Pakatan Harapan's big win, it wasn't built on populist promises. The whole brand was institutional cleanup.
Right, reform, that was the word on everyone's lips.
Exactly. The core appeal was dismantling systemic corruption, reforming bodies like the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission itself. So when that promise is seen to be, well, weakened, their key supporters start to disengage, and you get results like Sabah.
So what Rafizi is saying is the government can give all the speeches it wants, but the message just isn't landing. People aren't feeling it.
There's a massive disconnect. And he's been quite clear on this, saying that internal polls and surveys, even from early 2024, consistently show that public anxiety over anti-corruption performance is the #1 criticism.
More than the economy. More than the cost of living.
Surpassing those concerns. And if your core voters believe you're failing on your #1 promise, that's not a small complaint. That's a structural failure.
And he's not just going on gut feeling. He actually brought data to back this up, some really worrying metrics on enforcement.
He did. And this is where the conversation shifts from, rhetoric to hard reality. He highlighted a pretty dramatic decline in the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission's effectiveness over the last few years.
Okay, so let's break down the first one. He talked about the ratio of cases that actually get prosecuted versus the total number investigated.
Yes. So in 2020, that number stood at a relatively robust 56%.
56, okay.
Which suggests, a strong follow-through, a commitment to seeing cases through the courts. But Rafizi pointed out that by 2024, that crucial figure had plummeted.
To what?
Just 39%.
Wow, from 56 to 39, that's a huge drop.
It's a 17-point drop. It suggests a serious breakdown somewhere in the pipeline from investigation to prosecution.
But the real measure, the thing that tells you if people are actually being held accountable, is the conviction rate.
And that's where the numbers get even more staggering.
Mm.
This is what's really fueling public mistrust.
So what was the conviction rate?
In 2020, it was 36%.
Okay.
By 2024, Rafizi states that this rate had fallen sharply, down to just 22%. It was almost cut in half.
22%. So less than 1 in 4 cases that go to trial end in a conviction.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And when your ability to successfully convict those accused of graft falls that sharply, the public, quite naturally, starts to question the resolve of the entire system.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate for a second. Couldn't the government argue that a lower prosecution rate, going from 56 to 39%, means they're being more selective?
How so?
Maybe they're only pursuing the absolute slam dunk cases to be more efficient instead of, clogging the courts with weaker investigations.
That would be a perfectly viable argument if the conviction rate had gone up or at least stayed high. If you prosecute fewer cases but win more of them, that shows quality control. But since both the prosecution ratio and the conviction rate are falling at the same time, that points to a systemic problem.
A problem like lack of resources, maybe? Or worse.
Or a drop in investigative quality. Or, and this is the most damaging perception, political interference.
And this is where all those high-profile cases come in. The ones that end with a discharge not amounting to acquittal, a DNAA.
Precisely. For anyone listening, a DNAA means charges are dropped for now, but they can legally be brought back later. Politically, this creates this fog.
Right. The accused person walks free, but the government can say the case isn't technically closed.
And Rafizi argues that this ambiguity just screams a lack of political will to see things through to the end. It completely undermines whatever the Prime Minister says at a press conference.
Which brings us right back to the central point of his challenge. The one decision he says will make or break everything.
The leadership of the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission.
Specifically, the fate of the current Chief Commissioner, Tan Sri Azam Baki.
Yes. Rafizi has made it unequivocally clear. He believes the public will judge the Prime Minister's entire anti-corruption mandate based on this one decision.
And it all comes down to the contract extension.
It does. The question on the table is whether the Prime Minister will grant a fourth-term extension to the Chief Commissioner.
A fourth term.
A fourth. And Rafizi really emphasizes that. This isn't the second or third time this has come up. The repetition itself highlights this ongoing uncertainty that he feels needs a decisive answer now.
And he's not just saying this behind closed doors. He took it straight to Parliament.
He did. He directly challenged Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim this week, asking for a clear public statement on the extension.
And he pointed out the awkwardness of the situation.
He really did. He noted the irony that even the deputy president of his own party, Pakatan Harapan, has publicly criticized the idea of another extension.
That's a very public display of internal dissent.
It's extremely rare, and it's powerful. He's using both the hard data, those conviction rates, and the political mood within his own party to try and force the Prime Minister's hand.
So what was the government's response?
Vague. And Rafizi says that's unacceptable. He argues that vagueness on this issue automatically suggests hesitation or compromise, which is the exact opposite of what they were elected to do.
So if Sabah was the symptom and these stats are the disease, the cure, in Rafizi's view, is a big, visible institutional change.
It has to be. He's saying that the first step to rebuilding credibility, especially after that election loss, must be appointing a new chief commissioner for the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission.
It sounds like he sees it as a matter of political survival for the coalition.
He argues that extending the contract again, especially with all the history and past controversies, would permanently damage their brand. They'd basically be giving up the moral high ground they fought so hard for.
But he also said his own pressure isn't enough.
Right. This is where it gets really interesting politically. He doesn't think his voice alone will move the Prime Minister. So he explicitly called for public, collective pressure from across the coalition.
He named names.
He suggested key leaders, like Lok Soo Fook from the Democratic Action Party, and other high-ranking members of his own party need to step up and publicly back the demand for a new appointment.
He's asking them to risk internal harmony for the sake of public credibility.
It's a huge strategic demand. He knows there's a risk of showing disunity, but he clearly thinks the risk of losing the entire anti-corruption mandate is far, far greater.
So he's forcing them to make a choice.
A very public one. For someone like Lok Soo Fook, a public challenge might strain the relationship with the Prime Minister, but it might also solidify his standing with his own party's voters who expect nothing less than institutional reform.
So the whole thing hangs on whether these leaders are willing to spend some political capital now to restore public faith for the long term. A visible sacrifice, like you said.
That's exactly it. He's challenging the whole coalition to prove that their promises were real, not just something you say to get elected. And his point is, you can't mask failure on this. This one personnel decision defines the entire narrative.
So to sum it all up, the path to restoring voter trust, at least for Rafizi, isn't about new policies or more spending. It's about one single decisive change at the top of the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission.
A signal. A renewed, uncompromising signal that they are serious about accountability.
And that choice is going to define this government's legacy.
It really will. I mean, think about it. If you have these stark statistics with convictions almost being cut in half, what message are you sending to Malaysian voters if you choose continuity over a fresh start? If you stick with the status quo despite those numbers?
The public will draw their own conclusions.
They'll likely conclude the reform agenda is over.
Remember to like and subscribe for more videos like this.